Hello. I still remember the first time I volunteered with ACC. Fortunately, few if anyone else remembers that experience. It began for me one day when I responded to a forum post seeking volunteers for a network. Shortly after, I got a friendly call back, and eventually, the conversation got around to some relevant questions. Are you familiar with what the network does? I wasn't. Not entirely. Have you ever volunteered with a network before? I hadn't. Do you know what a membership chair does? Honestly, I didn't. The call could have gone better. I was pleasantly surprised a couple of days later when I got a call back. Congratulations, I was told, on your appointment to membership chair of the network. I was both excited and a little nervous. After all, I wasn't sure why they had picked me. I later learned that I was the only one who had applied. I think we can all agree that this had the potential to end badly. But before we get to how it turned out, let's go back and look at why I volunteered for this particular role in the first place. After all, we are talking today about a way to visualize your career strategy. My career began, as you might expect, for a young lawyer at a New York City law firm, working long hours, sometimes eating dinner at my desk, heading home late only to return early the next morning. Working on the weekends was not unusual, and as a litigator, I was out of the office a fair bit, making appearances at courthouses and offices in and around the city. I had no complaints. I thought I was good at my job, and there were perks. I had a fancy business card, nice suits, and, when I wasn't working, would enjoy interesting restaurants and exciting events. I thought I had it made. There came a time when things started to change for me. It was gradual at first, and I didn't understand what was happening, but something was wrong. I felt I was working hard, but nothing ever changed. I started going to work later and leaving earlier. And when I was in the office, my energy level was low, and I didn't enjoy my work. I came to learn, suffering from a form of stress called burnout. So what is burnout? The World Health Organization recognizes burnout as a type of work-related stress. Causes of burnout are varied and could include a lack of advancement opportunities, being overloaded with work, or job insecurity. Symptoms include a loss of energy, disconnection from one's work, and an inability to produce results. You may feel tired, moody, or unable to concentrate. Worse, you may turn to food or alcohol to feel better. And I've since learned that burnout is common in the legal profession. A recent Gallup study found that 2 out of every 3 employees reported feeling burned out on the job. And flattened org structures, remote work, and work-life imbalance are contributing to the problem. Looking back now, it seems so obvious. You see, I had lost my energy and drive. I was moody. I felt stuck and unable to advance in my career. There are a number of ways to address burnout and become unstuck, of course. A common recommendation is to unplug and relax, such as take a vacation or practice meditation. And these are good suggestions, though I inadvertently went a different direction and eventually discovered a new perspective and strategy that allowed me to unstick my career. In 1998, I lived in Manhattan, but that particular November weekend, I had met up with friends at an off-season beach resort a few hours south of the city. On Sunday, we were having brunch at a local sports bar. The big screen TV directly in my line of sight was tuned to the New York City Marathon. It's odd now how I lived in the city for all those years and never gave the marathon a thought. But leave the city for one weekend and the marathon captured my imagination. I was drawn to the runners, the stories, the excitement. Or maybe it was the Bloody Marys. Whatever it was, before we had finished brunch, I had resolved that I would begin training for next year's marathon, in a couple of days. Now, if you've never trained for a marathon before, for beginners like me, the process is fairly straightforward. About 18 weeks before the marathon, runners begin a training schedule that gradually takes them from their base running level in week 1 right up until the day of the marathon. The plan is to increase your mileage about 10% or so each week, with a few longer runs thrown in for good measure. I selected a medium training schedule that I thought would be doable and give me a respectable finish time. There was only one problem. Well, maybe not just one problem. At that time in my life, I was not a runner, and the schedule I selected began with a base level assumption that I was comfortable on a 4-mile run. How hard could that be? I did have one thing working in my favor. I had 32 weeks to go from a 0-mile comfort level to a 4-mile comfort level when I would begin my 18-week formal training. And so I began my marathon training with a walk. A lot of walks, actually. and even built it into my commute to and from the office. Eventually, I mixed in some jogs and continued to build until I was comfortable running 4 miles. I had reached my first major milestone and was ready to begin my 18-week formal training. Flash forward, I stuck to my 18-week training with a passion. Not even a light rain would keep me from putting in my miles, though my rain-soaked clothes did slow me down. I also got 2 lucky breaks. I suffered no major injuries, and I won the marathon lottery, giving me a ticket to the starting line. I went on to run and finish the New York City Marathon. But that is not the point of my story. I had some great experiences during that period and made some new friends. And even though my job hadn't changed, I no longer felt burned out. I felt energized. I also learned a little about what it takes to achieve goals. Things like run smart. For the runner, that means pacing yourself and regulating your carbs and liquids, making the right choices. Be a realistic optimist. I'm never going to run a 4-minute mile, but I could run a marathon in less than 4 hours. Setting a realistic goal will give you confidence. And for any big goal, you will need a healthy measure of patience, willpower, and grit, as there will be setbacks. Although I did not have any major injuries, I thought my training was over when I sprained my ankle just a couple of months before the race. Fortunately, the sprain was mild enough that I quickly recovered and got back out on the road. And I learned one more thing. When you run, you spend a lot of time with yourself. You have time to think, and I thought about what I should be doing with my career. At that time, I was a commercial litigator resolving disputes for my clients, all of whom were businesses, and I thought I could benefit from becoming more business savvy. If I could do that, I thought, I would be a better lawyer for my clients. The answer seemed clear to me. After all, there was already a well-established path for lawyers to get such experience. And so, still basking in the glow of reaching one big goal, I decided to have a go at another. I decided to pursue an MBA. New York offers a number of great programs, but I did need to get accepted by one of the schools, and that would require, among other things, a good GMAT score, which of course required a working knowledge of algebra, statistics, and probability. I'll admit, the thought of that much math gave me pause, but I was resolved, did the research, and developed a plan. And then I began, just like for the marathon, with a figurative walk. I took a class and began to relearn the math skills I would need to do well on the GMAT. And after all that, I did well enough to apply to business school. I had reached my first major milestone. Flash forward, I got into a local business school and, after a couple of years of hard work, earned my MBA while continuing to work full-time. But that is not yet the point. The truth is, business school was not always smooth. Neither was my training for the marathon. And there were those, people close to me, who told me I should or couldn't do it. Maybe they thought they were protecting me, who knows? But I persisted. I enjoyed returning to school, had some great experiences, and made some new friends. I felt energized and motivated. I now believed I was onto a process I could replicate to move forward in my career. Mark Twain wrote in his autobiography that there's no such thing as a new idea. We simply make new combinations of old ideas indefinitely. Returning to school had reawakened my love of reading for the sake of reading. It was shortly after that when I picked up the book Good to Great by Jim Collins. A few days in, my jaw hit the ground. There, in Chapter 8, Collins introduces us to a business strategy he calls the flywheel effect. A flywheel is a device that stores rotational kinetic energy, and because of its weight, a flywheel is difficult to move. As force is applied, the wheel starts to turn slowly. Increase the force, and the wheel turns faster and momentum builds. Eventually, with enough force, the wheel achieves a momentum that allows it to turn on its own. Collins uses the flywheel analogy to describe how companies that have transformed to greatness did not do so through any one thing, but that it was their incremental and cumulative efforts over long periods of time that led to what he termed the breakthrough. These gradual and often mundane efforts caused a slow buildup of momentum that propelled these companies to greatness. I was stunned. Here was a business strategy that relied on gradual efforts over time to build momentum and achieve big sustainable goals. It was just like my marathon training, where I gradually increased weekly mileage over time, with my mileage each week building on the base mileage from the prior week. It was just like my step-by-step plan to get into and through business school. But gradual effort is not random effort. These are cumulative efforts. You need to think ahead both to the goal and to the next step in the journey towards that goal. It is the strategic progression of steps that builds momentum and leads us to our eventual goals. I continue to visualize this strategy within my own career to successfully take on new responsibilities and roles, which brings us back to the story of why I volunteered to be the network's new membership chair. As it turned out, business school changed the course of my career in a direction I had not imagined at the time. Although I had intended for business school to make me a better litigator and advisor, what actually happened was that I discovered that I really liked solving business problems, and I liked the collaborative work in business school, which stood in stark contrast to the adversarial nature of my law practice. After business school, I was eventually able to transition my career to an in-house role where I could exercise my legal abilities and get closer to the business. And I found I liked being an in-house attorney and the opportunities it presented. I also discovered new skills I wanted to develop. I set new goals, like managing teams and becoming a thought leader. And ACC presented an opportunity for me to develop those skills and complement my progression at work. So what did I do next? Well, you should know the answer by now. I went for a figurative walk and applied for that entry-level volunteer role with the network. And once I got the role, I gave it my wholehearted energy. I was engaged. I learned. And I came back the next year in a new role, and the next. And I tried writing an article and taking on other new responsibilities, until eventually others began recognizing my efforts and abilities. But that is still not the point. It took a plan, a strategic progression of steps, each building on the one before, to advance my career. And more importantly, because I was passionate about the goals I'd set for myself, I was passionate about each step I took towards those goals. That was the missing piece of the puzzle, and what I had forgotten earlier in my career. As Ralph Waldo Emerson put it, life is a journey, not a destination. The same has been said about a marathon. The joy is found in the training and experiences building up to the race. Crossing the finish line is just a celebration of that journey. Even if you never reach your ultimate goals, remember, the journey is where everything happens. My journey is far from over, and I don't know if I will achieve all the goals that I set for myself, or whether, with time, I'll set new goals. But in a way, that doesn't matter. What I've learned is that while it is the goal that propels you forward, the goal is not enough. A goal without a plan is just a dream, and a dream could disappoint. If you have found the right goals, goals that are meaningful to you, then you will find joy and meaning in the steps to achieve those goals. It is, after all, in that journey, on your way to your goals, where everything happens. And whether you imagine the momentum you build training for a race or the turning of a flywheel, I hope I've given you a useful tool to visualize the pursuit of your goals. Thank you.